Hello, hello, everyone. All right.
Hello.
So
Hey.
before we get too started, I love putting everybody else on the spot. And Anthony, I know we got to hang out a bit yesterday, but if each of you can introduce yourselves and tell us a bit of your favorite feature of the framework of your choice or something that you love about what you do.
I can start maybe. So I'm Matias, also known as Patak, and I work at StackBlitz, where I get to focus on the Vite ecosystem. And my favorite part, I think, of Vite is the instant feedback loop that you get, that you can directly, change something and see the result right away. I think that right now we are starting to get very used to that, but like that was like so magical 2 years ago when like Vite started to really take off.
Yay. Thank you. Bjorn, do you want to go next?
Okay. Hello. I'm Bjorn. I currently also maintain Vite. One of my favorite features would be the ESM focus of Vite, which pushes the ecosystem forward. There's in the past, like, there's a lot of user CJS, and everyone is a bit confused on what's going on. Why is it so complicated? But I think Vite hits a sweet spot that hooked me in. So today, here I am. So I really like that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anthony, you're last but not least.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. My name is Anthony Fu, and I am the core team of the both Vite and Nuxt. So mostly I was serving as the bridge of a little bit like communication or like bringing up issues or features that that could like maybe help Nuxt or like driven from Nuxt need. And I think the best feature, or maybe it's not a feature, the best thing of it to me is the ecosystem. So that's, I think that initially for Nuxt, we are like a little bit hesitate to say if we want to have Vite as our bundler, because like in Nuxt 2 we use Webpack, and shifting to Vite, that means a lot of like ecosystem, like our modules ecosystem shifting or something. So at first, like when Vite comes out as a bit like experimental, like we hesitate about it, but we also see the great potential of it. So we start to build a Vite builder that's like having, we were trying to want Nuxt 3 to work for both Vite and Webpack, and like later, and suddenly we see, okay, yeah, Vite is very great. So we decide to change our default bundler from Webpack to Vite. So now it's basically, I think, like 95% of our users using Vite. So so I believe that the same story happens on a lot of other meta framework like Svelte, like migrate from Snowpack to Vite, and Astro also did that. So I think that's the whole ecosystem that every framework that works together and makes Vite better, and as well as eventually benefit our each frameworks together, which I think is probably the best thing that I could think that the Vite could have. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you. All right. So, starting with all of the questions we have of what can you say, and I feel like a few of you kind of answered this already, but can you say is the main factor for success on Vite?
I think that Anthony just answered that pretty well, because the collaboration, I think, was like one of the key factors, but also one of the key ideas that enabled that was doubling down on rollup API. And actually, when V2 adopted this idea from WMR, that like the universal plugin API that works using the rollup API both in dev and build, that really unlocked it like a tons of innovation, and like there were like new plugins daily on Discord being presented, and people like getting together. And so yeah, that I think there was some like being at the right place at the right spot, but what Anthony described about like cross framework collaboration for me is like the main factor for its success.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at its success, I see it from the 0 to 1, where ironic enough, it's also like the V0 version to V1 version, where initially it started with only Vue support, and it moves like the entire Vue community to the bundler, and then at a certain point, Evan decided that it should be also framework agnostic, and then it starts pulling all the other frameworks. It also goes back to the same ecosystem argument where everyone can benefit it. I think that's where it really came to fruition. So I think from that point on, it really skyrocketed. The 0 to 1 ramp will always be the hardest part, and I think we did it really well.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have a question that I need to put in here because this is something that I've always wondered about, because I realized that my very first live stream for Teach Gen Tech, we used Vite. And this always made me curious. How did the name come about and the pronunciation? Because I kept wanting to say Vite, and it's not Vite, it's Vite. So how did it get named Vite? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I guess that Ava might be the best one to answer this. But
Okay.
yeah, I will just explain a bit of my assumption of what I have learned. So like if you know that Vue is actually also a French word. It's a word meaning of view. It's VIEW. It's called like in the same pronunciation, but for Vite is French word fast. And yeah, so why it's called Vite? Because it's following the French pronunciation rather than English. So and even prefer to keep that as a characteristic, I guess. So we can prefer it to be called as Vite. And yeah, I think any other thing you want to share?
No?
I don't
Okay.
know.
I'm pretty sure that is it, but I've never actually asked. So next Q&A I have with Evan, I'm gonna save that question too.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any best practices for using Vite in someone's project? I feel that's very open-ended, but
You want to recite your performance guide PR, Bjorn? Maybe that.
Yeah. So just today, I was drafting a PR for new documentation for performance, which I guess it goes in best practices. So if you hit slower builds, slower page loads, you probably want to optimize a bit. Probably not doing something good. So yeah, there'll be a new page coming really soon. You can check if you're following best practices to squeeze the already. Personally, I feel like V is already very fast, but you could probably squeeze more of the performance from it. But yeah, it'll be up soon, and we could share it.
ooh, I like this. It answered the next question. Anything to add before I go to the next question?
I think a best practice is to install like half the plugins from Anthony, like so like Vite plugin inspect to start with. Like if you're using icons, like check out unplugin icons. Like it is like best practice as a plugin machine, Anthony.
Can confirm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question, which any performance tips working with Vite? Bjorn, you already started talking about that. So
Performance tips.
anything specific you want to mention?
Yeah, I guess if you've seen like some of the discussion recently about barrel files, where you have a single file that re-exports from other like hundreds, I won't say thousands, that'd be weird. But yeah, barrel files that exports a bunch of files. So when you import like that single file, you import all the other files, and then you don't actually use all of the contents of the file. So I think that's one of the biggest bottlenecks so far. If also a lot of thumbs up in the issue we have, people want it to be fixed, but turns out it's a bit harder to fix in Vite by default. So yeah, it goes by the best practice as well, that you should probably try to avoid bearer files, especially in Vite where files are served individually and lazily. So yeah, that'd be my number one point for performance.
Thank you. All right. Oh, this is a great next question of there are so many awesome Vite plugins. Is there any plans to have like a marketplace to showcase them? Or any tips on where people can find them all?
Yeah, I think this would be a little bit tricky. So we have an awesome list in our Vue.js organization. So at first, that when Vite started, there isn't a lot Vite plugins, so that we could still like manually pick them, or accepting PRs to add them. But as the Vite ecosystem grows so much bigger, and now it becomes a little bit trickier, because it's really hard to draw a line to say how plugins could into this list or not. Or like if you have a marketplace, for example, like it's also hard to say how you could submit to this or something. So there's a lot of management issue to do so, and it's also tricky to kind of review all those code to make it's like hard to justify the quality of each plugin. So I guess we don't have like very like clear plans on this. And so I guess if you want to search for Vite plugins, you can probably looking into the others into the others open source Vite projects, and to see how they use each plugins, and for different cases, and then you can search for them, I guess. But yeah, if you have any better idea.
It would be great to have something like Nuxt have for modules. Like it's so good. Like, and later on that you can integrate it with DevTools as good as you showed yesterday.
Yeah, I also think
sounds
there's
like oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, you can also search for Vite plugins in npm. I think we support, and we recommend the Vite-plugin tag, the keyword, if you search on npm to go help.
All I was going to add, because that's a great call out, thank you, Bjorn, is that it sounds like, if we had more contributors and wanting to help out, that this could be something that other people could help out with, because there is a lot on the to-do list to be able to make everything up and running at all times. So thank you, all of you. Up next, someone is hoping to contribute to open source. Is there any ways they can do this with Vite?
I talked with like Shaz, one person there in Discord, I think yesterday, like that, thanking them for helping others, because they in the past week, I think like after VidConf, maybe they stayed, and like they have been like helping a lot of newcomers, and I think that is a really, really good way to get involved, like because it forces you to learn a lot of like Vite config options, to like get deep into like what are people struggling with, and naturally from there you're going to learn, and you're going to like be able to even like do PRs at one point. And the other big thing, there are like 400 open issues or more, like, and there is a lot of triaging always to do. A lot of the open issues are just config problems, for example. So that to me is a very good way to get started. A lot of people try to go directly to do a PR, for example, and get a little bit frustrated, because it is good to before have some, let's say, I don't know, like approach it a little bit slower, and yeah, like that will help so much. but there is a lot to do everywhere. So like just go to Discord and talk with us.
I really like that. And y'all, we'll drop the Discord link later on in the chat because it's definitely something that is very helpful to be a part of these communities. All right. Next question. How can Vite be used to improve accessibility of open source projects? Ooh, we might have stumped everybody. We talked yesterday a bit about, and I believe it was with Nuxt, of the transitions and how accessibility with that piece. Is there something that comes to mind on how Vite could help with accessibility? Like on, I'm trying to think, with everything coming to mind is more about CSS, but
I think
So
we has control of the HTML files, and maybe we could, there could be like a plugin that tries to check the accessibilities of HTML files. But that's the most I can think of. Yes, Pastor Anthony has more ideas.
yeah, so I guess I'm not very sure about the accessibility mentioned here. So if we're talking about accessibility, we're probably talking about the web accessibility. So it'll be a client side. While Vite will mainly for manning a bundler or manning a build tool. So so it's a little bit like we trying to be agnostic as possible. So that means that we don't really know what is going on the client side. We just know what's the relationship on your source code, and we handles all the bundling, all the relationship. So yeah, so in that sense, if you are talking about accessibility of the app itself, so I think that's possible. There's quite a few plugins to do that. For Vite, what we could do is to expose enough information for accessibility plugins to hook into, and to like either injecting some script to the client side, or static analyze our source code or our HTML file to provide suggestions. And I think at Vite, we probably don't want to lock into one certain solution. So I think for accessibility, there is also multiple solutions, and each may have their own pros and cons. So I think for us, we just make sure that our plugins interface is powerful enough to support such extension or such plugins in order to like function properly. So I think it's already quite possible. So we at Nuxt, we are trying to build an accessibility module, like doing that, because Nuxt is built on top of Vite. So that I think that probably means that Vite is quite capable of doing that.
great. Thank you. Anything that you wanted to add, Matias?
No, like I second what Anthony said about like this is a problem more at the framework level, because they have all the context to give, like, to provide these tips. For example, like right now, if you go to, yeah, like Anthony mentioned Nuxt, but like also like Svelte has their own like tips built in, and Astro, I think the same, Bjorn, I imagine. So
Yes,
like it feels like, as Anthony said, like Vite should like be there to enable that kind of things on top.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So when using Vite in any framework, how would you load images with dynamic paths?
I think we have, for dynamic paths, we have like the glob feature where you could glob all the files that you probably want, because Vite needs to know what files you might want so they can process, do the hashing, or even do optimization if you have like plugins to do optimization. And yeah, Vite should work by default with images. If you just import the image and then you just get a string, can put in the image source and it just render. But yeah, I also know that other frameworks like Nuxt and Astro, they have their own image solution, so they can use their image solution to load certain files and do optimization in one go. So I think there's a lot of choice today. You could, and I think you can find some examples in your documentation to use it.
Thank you.
One thing there, related to best practices, like there is this plugin called Vite Image Tools that if you are loading images is really good because it will allow you to decide on the correct side or do conversion to WebP, and it works great. And most frameworks now, I think, are using it or like something similar to provide built-in already, like components to use images, but that is good if you're using Vite only.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, what are the most common goof ups or common mistakes that people make when using Vite?
Asking a question about Vite configuration in the ViteConf channel.
Yeah.
We should rename ViteConf because it is
That's
like
a big one. Yeah.
weekly questions about Vite configuration there.
Yeah, I have a muscle memory that's every time I type ViteConf and I have IG after it, and then I had to delete it.
All right. It's always good to hear that everybody does make these type of mistakes or goof ups because we're all human. So we're all going to do it. So thank you for sharing a few. All right. Someone often encounter CORS issues with when working with a Vite project. Any tips to understand this issue, and are there any helpful solutions to them?
So I guess that in order to help or provide any suggestions, we need like maybe more information. So I think in general that for cross origin, these things is more like a browser limitation. So so like while Vite is a builder, that's a build tool that's working underneath, it's not related to the browser part. So maybe there will be one issue is like because Vite use WebSocket in order to do the HMR. So if you're using any proxy to proxy your Vite server, you need to be sure that you also proxy the WebSocket correctly to in order to connect to that event. But other than that, I don't think those things are really tied related to Vite itself. It's probably a more like a user app or maybe a framework, a meta framework related thing.
Great, thank you. All right, I feel like we started on this question already, but I'll just make sure that there's nothing we want to add. Of if someone wants to contribute, what is the thing to start from? And to recap, I heard a lot of the community is a really great place to start. There's a lot of open issues. And is there anything else that y'all would like to add to this question?
I could probably add a bit. I think if you want to contribute anything, not just Vite, I guess the most important thing is to contribute something you work on or you rely on or your favorite tool. Because the last thing is you work on something popular but you don't really use it and you slowly lose the motivation to continue contributing. So if you're using something that you rely on, there's like more incentives that you could continue on and eventually becoming a maintainer because there's a reason for it, which is also how I use this thing because I started using Vite at work as well, and I rely on it, and then I contribute back to things that I use, and that's a tip I'd say if someone want to start.
Thank you. That's a great call out. especially with we're recording this in October, so Hacktoberfest is currently going on, and that's a great place for people to get comfortable contributing to open source. And if they're wanting some like first time contributor options, good first issues, I think that's a great place to get started too. So great call out for being outside of Vite. Thank you. All right. So, what is the latest on Vitest?
Okay. And I think again, I'm not the best one to answer this question, but so I think current lead of Vitest is Vladimir, and he made a great talk on VidConf to announce about the plans of Vitest 1.0. So I think you will expect that 1.0 will be come up soon. So that will mark it a bit like more stable APIs, and you will expect it to not be changed that frequently. So yeah, with a lot like refactor and new feature. So yeah, do check it out. I think you can also find more resource on the Vitest GitHub repo.
Thank you. All right. How about, are there any tips and resources for migrating someone's project from Webpack to Vite?
We get asked this question like several times, and like my take on it is that it's better to start fresh as possible and really understand Vite itself, like play with like a small version, more if you're like migrating a huge app, and really understand the difference of concept between Vite and Webpack, instead of just using like an automated tool that you click a button and will do something, and then maybe you will keep the old practices, and kind of like take the migration as an opportunity to even review like your old dependencies. Like maybe if you're using Webpack and you're migrating to Vite, like maybe you are also using some dependencies that are like already not well maintained. And yeah, like it's a good moment, I think, to do a full review of the project.
Thank you. Are there any things that you would see people running into, or I know this kind of goes back to the common mistakes, but is there anything that people ask about or run into a lot if they are rebuilding in Vite that is commonly missed when rebuilding compared to Webpack?
I think one of the biggest one, which is not a bit related to Vue, is about React or JSX. I think a lot of people find it strange that JSX only works with the JSX extension. If you use .js, it doesn't work. I think that's one of the biggest hurdle when they try to migrate to Webpack, from Webpack to Vue. But there are solutions out there, but ultimately I think it's still worth, like Pratap mentioned, trying to review your code. Maybe you could actually rename the extension instead of putting a plugin, and eventually you might have to do extra work, and then it slows down the development again. So yeah, that's the biggest one.
Thank you. All right. Vite is usually a dev server. Is it possible to run it as a production server, and is that advisable?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Don't do it. Okay. Can I hear a bit more about like why? So for people wondering, the behind the scenes on that.
I think because the Vite dev server is by default, they're not bundling anything. So if you have like a big project with thousands of files, 1,000 of files has to send across the internet to your laptop in a production server, and that's not good, and that's very slow. So yeah, so that's one of the biggest problem when someone tries to connect maybe Vite from somewhere. Even if the preview server, if you use it, is not really ready for production. It's more of a way for you to emulate what might look like in a production. So yeah, most of Vite would ideally be better. It's designed specifically if you're developing locally. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. Whatever happened to TurboPack? Is it still a thing? And how does it compare with Vite? Nobody go first. Is it just that far gone that it's like it was a thing for a while, but it's just gone now? So no comments? Or how are we feeling about that?
It is currently using Next.js. Like we don't hear that much, I think, because it is more like localized at this point to Next. But yeah, like they are still working on it.
Yeah, and I think TurboPack is still, I think it's still relevant today, even in the past, especially in Vite 4.3, we did a big push to improve the performance of Vite, where we also heavily compare like the performance with TurboPack and other popular bundles today, and that really helped push Vite towards being more performant than it already is. So yeah, I think it is still very important that TurboPack is still here today to really push the ecosystem into better tools. And yeah, still excited to see how it shape up in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. What are your thoughts on a pipeline that involves no build step? Are all current build steps really just a patch until we can support a web with no build step?
So, I would express a bit like very personalized. Oh, my very personal opinion. So I think maybe there is a still long way to go, because that I think in web development, the field is quite different, because that I think one of the things is like the limitation of JavaScript as a language. So because in web we are dealing with HTML with CSS, so that's where JavaScript wasn't designed for that, or wasn't designed to express those things. So then either you have to write a lot to work around with the language, or otherwise you need to introduce a domain-specific language, or DSL, in order to improve the developer experience. So for example, like React have JSX, Vue have a Vue single file component, Svelte have Svelte file. In order to describe those components or those HTML tags inside JavaScript, so that we could make it those interactive. So I think it's indeed that's possible. You can build a web app without any build. It's already possible. I think decades ago, you can use CVM. You can use a lot of things to do so. But we also see that the reason why we use components framework like Vue is to help us to better isolated our logics and those like handling of updates, and also make us have a better organization of our code base in order to build more complex app in the long term. So I think currently a build step is still necessary in many cases. So like we can do like many things like trade shaking, bundle like trunking, or like minifying or something. So yeah, I think that's still valuable, but it's always the answer is like it depends on what you need. So yeah, so I think that's my point of view.
Thank you. Anything else anyone else wants to add?
I think I could add one small point. I usually see build versus no build step. It's kind of like the step where you go from doing your manual tasks daily, and then you find it repetitive, and then you start automating things. So I think build step is kind of the part where you start automating things. Like you could do it this way, just that it's very repetitive. You have to do it in this very specific way to get everything right. And I think build step is kind of where you kind of automate the boring parts so that you don't have to do as much as before. So I think there's still benefits because everyone wants to automate things, especially if it takes a longer time than it was before.
Yeah. One thing is that tools like Vite, I think, really help into like making having a build step not such a bad thing as before. Maybe like it was more of an objective to try to remove the build step when it was getting into the way of actually getting that instant feedback loop, because you need to do the whole build thing to be able to see what you created. But with Vite, that they have like the dev server and the build separated, and we can have trade-offs that are different from both of them. Then you can have like both things. Like you can have the niceties of having a build step, as Anthony and Bjorn said, and at the same time use it in dev without that build step, and actually use unbundle development and have that instant feedback.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. Is Vite a viable option for normal Node.js backends where there is no front end involved? I feel like we answered some of this with the previous question.
With no front end, so that would be a little bit interesting. So like Vite was, I think, mainly for a front end tooling. But if you mean that's not front end at all, or you mean no server at all, yeah, we have a project called Vite Node that runs the Vite pipelines in Node and evaluate. So that project is mainly for like it's born from Nuxt server side render that we want to handle the server side renders in that time using the same pipeline as Vite. So we create it. And then later it becomes the core engine of Vitest that's running the test using Vite, but it's in the backend. And if that would be the question was talking about, I think maybe like you can check Vite Node if you really want to do that. But I think usually you shouldn't do that because it's a little bit less efficient. But unless you really want the Vite options, Vite pipeline, Vite plugins to handle your backend code, and then you could try it.
Sweet, thank you. All right, next question of how can someone test a trigger or a function triggered by a watcher in my Vue 3 project with Vitest?
So I think there will be multiple ways of doing that, and if you have access to that function, maybe you can do a stump, a spy on that thing. So then you can know that when the function being called and how they are being called, and in that way you can just test as usual, and that probably even not being related to Vue. You just need to get it fire up, and otherwise, yeah, I think that would be the most straightforward approach. Or if you don't have the, or if the function comes from the module, maybe you can stump the whole module to pass a fake function, and otherwise you can do end-to-end testing or integration testing. You can mount that components using that watch, and you see how the different data is being updated and check the DOM element to verify those things. So I think that really depends on the use case.
Great, thank you. Okay. And I know we talked a bit about this, but like with what about model federation with Vite? Is it possible? And if yes, why would someone want it?
As Evan said in the talk, like it's possible. There is a plugin to do it at this point, and like later on efforts in roll down, the idea is to have model federation support built in. So that story for the teams that wants to use model federation will get better. And I think that mainly it is a way to scale very large teams, because you can have like different teams working in different modules and at the same time in a way that, like, to be honest, like from a lot of people in the Vite Core team at this point, I think like we don't usually use a lot of model federation, so that hasn't been a priority. But as Vite gets used more and more in enterprise, and so that is changing for the future.
Yay. Thank you. I like this one. How does it work to run Vite with someone's Laravel project? Is that commonly done? I don't know off the top of my head.
They are using Vite by default right now, so like I think the best is go to their documentation, and like if you are interested in the implementation details, like they have a plugin that you can dig into and see how it works.
Cool. Thank you. Who wants to talk about Vitpress and what's on the pipeline for it? I feel like I'm going to Google it. Because I feel like something that it happens a lot on these Q&As is it's like somebody is near one of these projects that we want to know questions about, but it may not be the person on stage. So before we go into this one, is there a good way for people to know who may be the best person to ask one of these questions? Like, does it say on this on the site somewhere or about on who works on what and where?
I have to look it up. But
I think usually
the core maintainer of Vitpress right now, I think is working closely with us of the ecosystem. So I have to look it up. But yeah, definitely if you go to GitHub on Vitpress, you should see the first or second top contributor recently is working on Vitpress almost every day, I think. So, and I also believe he is on Twitter or X. So you could definitely, you should follow him to get the latest updates on Vitpress.
Cool. Thank you. All right.
What I know about,
Oh, go ahead.
What I know about it is in 1.0 RC, so it's probably going to be 1.0 very soon. And but actually we have been using it for a few years. And I'm not sure how many years we have, like maybe 2 years already. So Vite is using ViteConf and Vite is using Vitpress, and like basically a lot of ecosystem, their documentation is using Vitpress. So I think currently it's pretty stable, but you just be aware that during those before like 1.0 that something will change, maybe the style, maybe the pipeline, maybe the configuration, but itself when you fix the version, it works perfectly fine. And I think that's probably what I can tell.
Yeah, and I have to mention the name is Divyansh Singh, who is currently maintaining Vitpress right now. So yeah, definitely follow him on Twitter, I think _BRC_DD. So yeah, you have more information on it.
Great. Thank you. All right. Let's talk more about Bun, because we did talk a little about this with Evan. But can someone use Vite with Bun, since Bun is proposed to be to also be a handler?
Bun has supported Vite now for a while. It's the same as Dino. Jared, like it was, I think, in the repo, one of the most voted issues, like Vite support. So like if for a while you could only use Bun as a package manager, and then later on, like now you can directly develop using Vue. And yeah, I think that the scope of Vue keeps growing, and like I will imagine that it could be an alternative to Vite at one point, because it is an alternative to many things right now and in the future. But I think the story, it is like better together. Let's say, like Vite has a massively huge ecosystem, and running Vite and Vue together works very nicely, I think, for the future.
Great, thank you. All right, 2 more questions. What is one new Vite feature? See if I can talk today. Vite feature in the pipeline that you are most excited about?
I guess I
Bjorn,
could talk about.
well, perfect. I was going to pick on you first, so yay.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I guess I could talk about recently. I just submitted a PR to V recently. I think Pata also helped review, which is a feature for HMR, soft invalidations, which is also something Evan has a comment like 2 years ago, and I work on it recently. So what it does is that if you edit one file, and then all the files that imports that file like recursively, they all get invalidated. So the code that you transform just get throws away. But actually, you don't have to throw them away. You just have to update the imports a bit to get the new timestamp, so you get the new module, all that stuff. So what you do is that you keep all of the modules there. You don't just throw them away. And when they get requested next time, you just update that small part, the import timestamp, and once all this feature works together, you only have to do one transform for that one file that you actually edited. So I think, I haven't measured the benchmark yet, it should be a lot faster when you do HMR, especially for big projects. So yeah, I'm really excited to get this one out, especially in the beta really soon. So yeah, it's almost done.
Yay. Anyone else want to add theirs?
Like I want to do a shout out to Bjorn for all the work in Vite that like we announced it today. So go test it and like give us feedback about that release. Like Bjorn, Safi, and all the team members, like a massive amount of work done there. And about the most exciting feature, that maybe it's like it doesn't sound that exciting, but for me the feature of Vite is how it keeps getting faster and like in a solid way, like without like and taking all the ecosystem forward for like them to innovate. So like a lot of the time you see like a lot of shiny features that are like from the frameworks, but like from Vite point of view, I think like being like that solid common base is like one of the key features that we have.
Great, thank you. All right. Well, Anthony, that leaves you. Any feature you want to mention?
Yeah. So yeah, to be honest, I am not really following Vite the core itself a lot recently. Like I think Blue, Safi, they are taking over these things and they are doing very great job. So I was mostly focusing on the Nuxt side. So I see that Vite is also, to me, is a pretty solid foundation already. So I don't have anything to complain about it. So yeah, if you have a small issue, I'll just bring it up to the team and we could fix it. But other than that, I think overall, I'm pretty happy with the current state of Vite. And I'm also like looking forward to the new Vite 5 and also the down line to have a bit rustified. And yeah, and I think I'm the one that's getting all the benefits from Vite and maybe not contributing enough.
I appreciate the honesty. All right, last question. Is there anything else y'all want to share with the community about your work and Vite? To start, I feel like we could just give another shout out to Bjorn and team for all the work that they've done, and just echoing what Matias said about it. So just to start, that is one thing to call out as well.
Thank you. I guess
All
yeah. I
right.
guess I'll probably start. I think for me, I think all of us here right now are lucky enough to work on, like, have a company sponsoring our open source work as well. Like Matias is Tech Blitz, me with Astro, and Anthony with on Nuxt. And we actually have all the sponsors, special sponsor on our Vite homepage to show our appreciation. But I think that's one of the best part for me is to be able to work on something that we like while also doing meaningful work for companies that also depend on Vite. And I think it's been a real pleasure, and I'm fortunate enough to be part of this.
Yay. Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much for all of your time here today. We appreciate it. I know we have gone through a lot. I put it back to the screen so we can see everybody's handles. These are all the X, formerly known as Twitter handles, and make sure that you follow them and stay up to date. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to ask in our chat. Feel free to tweet them. And thank you all for joining today.